Imagine waking up tomorrow and looking outside your window. The sun is gone. Not hidden behind clouds. Not eclipsed, but gone. The strange part is that you would not know immediately, because for about 8 minutes, everything would look completely normal. That is because sunlight takes roughly 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach Earth. So even if the sun vanished instantly, Earth would continue receiving its last sunlight for a few minutes. Then the daylight would stop. And the real answer is far stranger than simply saying, it would get dark. Your first problem would not be darkness. It would be the sky. For a few minutes, the world would continue exactly as it always does. Birds would fly. Cars would move. People would work. Your brain would have no reason to expect anything unusual. Then the last sunlight would arrive. The sky would lose its blue color. The familiar brightness would disappear. And unless artificial lights were nearby, you would suddenly be looking into a sky filled with stars. But there would be something missing. The sun itself. What happens next? To understand that, you have to remember what the sun actually is. It is not just a giant light bulb hanging above Earth. The sun is the main source of energy for almost every ecosystem on the planet. Its gravity also helps keep Earth moving along its orbit. And those two facts create two very different disasters. One happens immediately. The other unfolds much more slowly. Start with gravity. If the sun somehow disappeared completely, its gravitational influence would not vanish from Earth instantly. Just like sunlight, changes in gravity propagate at the speed of light. So Earth would continue following its normal orbit for about 8 minutes. Then something extraordinary would happen. Earth would no longer be pulled toward the sun. It would stop following its curved path around it. Instead, Earth would travel in a nearly straight line through space. Think of a ball tied to a string and being swung around your head. The string keeps pulling the ball inward, forcing it into a circle. Cut the string, and the ball flies away in a straight line. The sun is effectively providing that inward pull for Earth. Remove the sun, and Earth's orbital path becomes a straight journey into the darkness. But you would not suddenly feel Earth accelerating away. There would be no giant explosion. No violent shove. No dramatic sensation beneath your feet. You would simply be standing on a planet that had lost its star. And then the temperature would begin to fall. This is where the situation becomes much more serious. Earth is not heated only because sunlight makes the surface warm during the day. The planet constantly receives enormous amounts of energy from the sun. Without that energy, the surface would begin losing heat into space. At first, the change would not be catastrophic. The oceans would act like enormous heat reservoirs, releasing stored thermal energy and slowing the cooling process. The atmosphere would also hold on to some heat. So Earth would not instantly become a frozen ball. But every day without the sun would push the planet closer to one. What would happen to your body? You would still have a source of heat if you were indoors. You could burn fuel. You could use electricity. You could stay underground. But the planet itself would be getting colder around you. Eventually, ordinary outdoor life would become extremely dangerous. Plants would face an even more immediate problem. They need light for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process plants use to convert light energy into chemical energy, essentially turning sunlight into stored food. Without sunlight, photosynthesis would stop. No new plant growth. No new leaves producing energy. No crops growing normally. And that creates a chain reaction. Plants feed herbivores. Herbivores feed predators. Humans depend on both plants and animals. So removing sunlight does not just remove daylight. It attacks the foundation of the food web. But here is where things get interesting. Not every living thing would immediately die. Some organisms do not depend directly on sunlight. Deep beneath the ocean, around hydrothermal vents, entire ecosystems exist in complete darkness. Instead of sunlight, these ecosystems can rely on chemical energy. Certain microorganisms use chemicals released from Earth's interior to produce energy through a process called chemosynthesis. These organisms can support strange communities of life, including giant tube worms and other animals adapted to extreme environments. So even on a sunless Earth, life would not necessarily disappear completely. It would become something very different. And that tells you something important about life itself. Life does not always require sunlight. But the complex world you recognize around you depends heavily on it. Now imagine the first night. There would be no sunrise. That sounds simple. But your brain is built around the rhythm of day and night. For thousands of generations, Human activity has been synchronized with the rising and setting of the sun. Your sleep patterns are influenced by light. Your body uses light cues to help regulate its internal clock. Without a natural day-night cycle, that biological rhythm would be disrupted, and the psychological effect could be enormous. Imagine looking outside every morning and seeing the same black sky. No dawn, no warm sunlight, no changing clouds glowing orange, no shadow moving across the ground. The world would lose one of its most basic signals that time is passing. But there would be one incredible visual reward. The stars. The night sky would become dramatically clearer. The sun normally dominates the daytime sky, and its brightness makes most stars invisible. Without it, the sky would become a permanent astronomical display. The Milky Way would stretch across the darkness. And if you were far away from city lights, you could see an astonishing number of stars. But even that beauty would have a disturbing meaning. You would be looking at a universe in which your planet was no longer orbiting its star. Earth would be drifting, and it would keep drifting. As the surface cooled, the oceans would begin changing. The top layers would freeze. Eventually, large portions of the ocean surface could become covered in ice. But the oceans would not necessarily freeze solid all the way down. The enormous amount of heat stored inside Earth, along with heat generated by radioactive decay and geothermal activity, would continue warming the planet from below. That means liquid water could survive deep beneath the ice for a very long time. Underneath that frozen surface, life might continue. This is one of the strangest possibilities. The surface could become an icy wasteland while underground environments remained relatively active. Caves, deep ocean, subterranean ecosystems, places protected from the extreme cold above. Humans, if they survived, would probably have to move toward environments where heat and energy could be controlled. Underground cities would become far more valuable. Geothermal energy would become incredibly important. Nuclear energy could provide another major source of power, and stored food would become priceless. Civilization would no longer be organized around sunlight. It would be organized around energy. That changes almost everything. Agriculture would become difficult or impossible outdoors. Artificial lighting would become essential for growing crops. Controlled environments would become the new farms. Instead of fields stretching across the surface, humans might grow food underground using artificial light. Every watt of energy would matter. Every source of heat would matter. Every calorie would matter. And the longer the sun remained absent, the harder survival would become. But there is an even stranger question. Could Earth ever become completely frozen? Eventually, the surface would become extremely cold. The atmosphere itself could begin changing as temperatures dropped far below anything humans normally experience. Some gases that are normally invisible in the atmosphere could eventually freeze and settle onto the surface. Earth would become a radically different world, but it would not be completely dead. Deep underground, geothermal heat would continue. The planet has its own internal energy. Earth's interior is hot because of leftover heat from its formation and radioactive decay inside the planet. That heat has been leaking outward for billions of years. So while the sun powers the surface world, Earth itself still has an internal furnace. That distinction matters. The sun makes Earth a warm, active surface planet. Earth's interior keeps parts of the planet alive even without it. And this is where the story becomes almost philosophical. You might think the sun is simply something you see every morning. A bright circle, a source of daylight. Something so familiar that your brain barely notices it. But remove it, and suddenly you realize how much of your life is built around an object 93 million miles away. Your food, your weather, your seasons, your climate, your ecosystems, your daily biological rhythms, even the shape of human civilization. All of them are connected to that distant star. Scientists have spent decades studying what makes Earth habitable. Researchers such as James Lovelock helped develop ideas about Earth as a complex, self-regulating system, while modern climate scientists have shown just how strongly the planet's climate responds to changes in incoming solar energy. And astrophysicists know that the sun itself is not permanent. It is a star with a life cycle. Fortunately, the sun is not expected to suddenly disappear. In fact, it is remarkably stable compared with many other stars. It has been shining for roughly 4.6 billion years and is expected to continue supplying Earth with energy for billions more. So this scenario is not a prediction. It is a thought experiment. And thought experiments can reveal something real. They show you which parts of reality are so normal that you stop noticing them. You notice your phone when its battery reaches 1%. You notice electricity when the power goes out. You notice water when the tap stops working. But you rarely notice the sun, because it is always there. That is exactly why its disappearance is such a powerful idea. The sun does not feel like a machine keeping you alive. It feels like background scenery. Yet every morning, without asking permission, it sends energy across 93 million miles of empty space. A leaf catches a tiny fraction of that energy. A plant stores it. An animal eats the plant. You eat food. Your muscles move. Your brain thinks. Your body stays warm. In a very literal sense, some of the energy moving through your body today began its journey inside the sun. And suddenly the sun stops looking like a ball of fire in the sky. It starts looking like the engine behind your entire world. So what if the sun disappeared? The first thing you would lose would be sunlight. Then warmth. Then photosynthesis. Then much of the food web. Civilization would struggle to survive. Earth would become colder, darker, and stranger. But life itself might not completely disappear. Some organisms would survive in places that never depended directly on sunlight. And Earth would continue carrying its hidden heat beneath the frozen surface. The planet would not instantly become a lifeless rock. It would become something unfamiliar. A dark world traveling alone through interstellar space. And perhaps that is the strangest part. You would spend your entire life thinking of Earth as a planet that goes around the sun. Then one day, it would simply be a planet moving through the darkness. No sunrise waiting ahead. No sunset behind you. Just Earth, drifting through space. And the next time you wake up and sunlight falls across your room, you might notice something you normally ignore. The sun did not just turn on the lights. It made your world possible.